poo.
Wibwobbers, Robbett here. Welcome to Robbett Watch Lucky Crank Analysis. If you've watched my video on Liberty Way, you'll know that I spent an inordinate amount of Y money on the Lucky Crank. More than I've ever spent trying to get a yokai by far. I started out with 4 million Y money and I almost spent it all. 3,792,000 to be exact, or 948 Lucky Cranks. What this has allowed me to do is look at the Lucky Crank with an unprecedented amount of data, and that's what I'm going to share with you. At the end of the video, we'll also see if I managed to get Libertynyan SS or not. So, what is the Lucky Crank? The Lucky Crank has only been introduced recently with the Liberty Way event, and it's a hybrid of the event gacha and dream roulette from Puni Puni. It maintains a separate list of yokai from the normal crankakai, costs a little more at 4,000 Y money per crank, and the big difference is that you can't max it out. This means that partial soul secrets have been pulled out of the normal crankakai, but when you pull a yokai you've already maxed from the Lucky Crank, you're going to get a full or partial soul secret in its place depending on the rank. Additionally, every 10 cranks the gauge on the Lucky Crank will be full, and you'll be in fever time, allowing better pull rates for higher ranked yokai. Many of you likely noticed that the phrases Whisper says, either in the Lucky Crank or the normal crankakai, tend to match up with the type of yokai you get. I logged every crank with the capsule color and phrase used to understand what it really means. There are 4 types of capsules in the crankakai: white, blue, red, and gold. In the Lucky Crank, you can't get the white capsule because it's only used for very low rank yokai, but you can get a white capsule that then switches to gold. There are 11 phrases Whisper can use, and each one is associated with only one type of capsule. The phrase used is more important than the color of the capsule. Blue capsules in the phrase is,
I wonder what you'll get. My yokai senses are tingling.
And
Go on, have a ball.
will only yield B rank yokai. The Lucky Crank currently has 11 B rank yokai. The red capsules have 4 different phrases. 2 of them yield both A and B rank yokai.
I can feel its power.
And
Yes.
there are currently also 11 A rank yokai in the Lucky Crank. Next is what I consider the Troll capsule. It's a gold capsule with Whisper saying the phrase.
Ooh.
This phrase is the equivalent of the previous 2 red capsule phrases and will only yield A and B ranks despite being a gold capsule. The remaining phrases are all the best ones that yield only S and SS rank yokai, as well as items such as the Sand Suit and Libertynyan SS pass. Red capsules with the phrases,
The anticipation is killing me.
and
Unbelievable.
are awesome. So is the gold capsule with the phrase,
Impossible.
as well as any phrase coming from a white capsule that changes to gold, such as,
Lady Luck, don't fail me now.
The good news is that blue capsules in B ranks only show up 6% of the time. Red capsules show up 75% of the time, but almost all of those are of the A and B rank variety. The 2 phrases that allow you to pull S ranks and above come only 2.5% of the time. Gold capsules show up 18% of the time, with 7% being the impossible variety that brings S ranks and above. Lastly, white capsules that change to gold show up a little over 1% of the time and always bring good results. In terms of ranks, A ranks and B ranks make up the vast majority of pulls at 52.5% and 36.5% respectively. S ranks are the next least rare, coming in at around 9.5%. Unfortunately, that leaves only around 0.5% for SS ranks and 0.5% split between the 2 items. Sand Suits and Libertynyan passes. So far, everything I've told you is about the Lucky Crank in its normal state. However, you get fever time every 10th crank. While it's only 10% of the time, the good news is that it really does shift results in your favor. During fever time, B ranks dropped only 2% of pulls. A ranks are largely unchanged, but drop slightly to 50.5%. S ranks are 4 times more likely at 44%, and SS ranks also quadruple to over 2%. Items seem to only double to a little over 1%, but given how rare they are, there's a higher margin for error when analyzing their results. Before we get to individual yokai results, there's also the lucky 4th of July coin. You can only get 3 lucky coins, so it's difficult to do a really valid test, but I did all 3 of my coins during fever time and received 3 S ranks. When it comes to which yokai or item you receive, there's a fairly wide range of pull rates even within the ranks. For this data, I'm showing you both inside and outside of fever time, and the rate irrespective of fever time. I won't spend too much time on B ranks, other than to say that they're largely eliminated during fever time. The only 2 B rank yokai that continue to show up in fever time are Nurse Tungus and Pride Shrimp, both of which are fusions and therefore more valuable. For A ranks, and actually for the lucky crank all up, Libertynyan has the highest rate of anything, which is perhaps ironic given he's always been one of the hardest yokai to befriend from the crank. There are a few yokai, such as Null and Bananos, that show up less during fever, but for the most part, odds are even. When you get to the most rare of A ranks, Pookevil, you can see that fever helps out quite a bit. This fundamentally makes sense since Pookevil is tied to the event, so they're hard to crank but fever makes it easier. As far as S ranks go, all of their percentages are low, but fever increases your odds tremendously. There are effectively 2 groups of S ranks, those that become fairly obtainable during fever and those that remain rare. Many of you are likely hoping for Unikirin to finally be able to open Slurp and Seal, but unfortunately the Digital God Horse is by far the most rare pull in the crank at only around 0.1%, or 1 in 1,000 pulls. The last category are the valuable SS ranks and items. While all of these statistics can highly vary when you're only doing a relatively small set of cranks, this category has the largest possibility for change simply because of how rare they are. Some people will get them on the first crank, others won't get them at all. Of the SS ranks, Hydabat Awoken is quite a bit easier to pull than Happy Air Awoken, but he's still only a 1 in 50 chance during fever. The Sand Suit is easier to get than the Libertynyan Pass, but it's still only 1% during fever. The Libertynyan Pass is the most difficult to get outside of Unikirin, and is roughly equivalent to once in 500 pulls. So, did I get Libertynyan SS like I guaranteed I would in my last video? Well, I certainly got another pass, but only during the first raid up. It took me 22 cranks before the pass showed up. This was my 3rd time attempting to battle and befriend Libertynyan SS. While that seems harsh, as usual, there are both people who befriended him on their first try and people that had failed to befriend him after 4 or 5 attempts. I went in with my befriender team, although this time in addition to Slurpent I brought a single attacker along as well. I tried my best to use as many befriending Sultimates as possible while minimizing damage. I continued in an attempt to charm Libertynyan as much as possible, but didn't end up using much of that extra time. He was knocked out soon after, and so began the second or 2 of waiting to find out, even if it seemed like an eternity. Indeed, I did get him, although without an item drop, which makes it 3 of 3 for me. That's highly unusual for a pass yokai. As you're no doubt aware by now, Libertynyan SS is a Heartful SS rank tracer, the first of his kind in Wib Wob. Now I just need to get yet another pass so I can complete his stars and keep my perfect record. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe to me on YouTube and Twitter for the latest Puni and WIbble Wobble information. Until the next video, good luck with the gacha.